The current defense narrative is a calculated misdirection. Media cycles fixate on new jet-powered drones from Russia and prime contracts for missile defense systems like SHIELD. This is the kinetic theater, loud, visible, and strategically irrelevant. It is designed to focus attention on the sky. While the nation is directed to look up, the systemic solvency of the state is being eroded from within. According to CSIS analysis, internal political fracturing, such as civil rights leaders calling for the impeachment of state governors, is no longer a domestic issue. It is a critical vulnerability broadcast globally, signaling a decline in national cohesion and will. The primary vector for attack is not a missile. It is silence. RUSI confirms over 97% of global communications, and trillions in daily financial transactions are channeled through a few hundred undersea fiber optic cables. The kinetic cost to sever these arteries is trivial compared to their systemic value. It is the economic equivalent of a decapitation strike. The second prong of this asymmetric attack is orbital, not the cinematic destruction of satellites, but their silent blinding. The objective is sensory deprivation. Reports from CSIS indicate that ground-based laser dazzling and electronic jamming of GPS and reconnaissance satellites is a mature, low-cost capability. The goal is to create operational paralysis without triggering a launch-on warning protocol. This is the blueprint for creating the blind Leviathan, a conventionally superior state rendered sensorially inert and paralyzed by internal political decay, a superpower unable to verify financial transactions, guide its assets, or trust its intelligence. The mathematical certainty is that a blinded state, to re-establish deterrence, must escalate with overwhelming and disproportionate force. The nuclear threshold ceases to be a last resort. It becomes the first logical response to prove it can still act. A nation-state is a corporation with an army. When it initiates a kinetic action that proves unpopular and excessively costly, it faces a solvency crisis. The leadership's political capital becomes a domestic liability. CSIS analysis confirms the Ukraine operation is viewed internally not as a patriotic cause, but as a drain on national resources, creating a dangerous deficit in public trust. This solvency crisis forces a pivot. A state cannot continue to expend high-value conventional assets on a failing venture. The kinetic cost becomes unsustainable. The protocol shifts from symmetric warfare to asymmetric asset liquidation. The objective is no longer to win on the battlefield. It is to manage the domestic perception of the balance sheet. The proof is in the hardware. Reports confirm Russia has begun deploying a new jet-powered one-way attack drone. This is not a technological marvel. It is an economic necessity. The system is engineered to neutralize high-value targets, such as a HIMARS launcher, at a fraction of the cost of a cruise missile. It is a low-leverage play designed for a high-yield result on the strategic ledger. This is the blueprint. Internal weakness, driven by a solvency crisis, does not lead to de-escalation. It is a systemic accelerant for asymmetric innovation. The mathematical certainty is that a state's fragility forces it to pivot to low-cost vectors, engineered to erode an adversary's national will. Weakness is the trigger for the next phase of conflict. The central equation of modern warfare is no longer about force on force. It is a problem of solvency. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, documents the kinetic cost imbalance. A $5 million main battle tank is a strategic asset on paper, but on the 21st century battlefield, it is a $5 million liability, waiting to be liquidated by a $500 drone. This is not a tactical curiosity. It is the blueprint for a systemic solvency crisis. The math is irrefutable. You have a 10,000 to 1 cost asymmetry. Every high-value platform, from armor to naval assets, is now permanently exposed to neutralization by low-cost, mass-produced systems. As documented, Russia is now deploying its own jet-powered one-way attack drones, validating the model. This is the democratization of violence. Lethality has been decoupled from the industrial base of a nation-state. The barrier to entry for projecting kinetic force has collapsed. It no longer requires a state-level military-industrial complex, merely a supply chain for consumer electronics and a data link. This is a mathematical certainty. The inevitable strategic response to this economic reality is disproportionate escalation. When your expensive deterrents are rendered insolvent, the only path to reestablishing leverage is to threaten what your adversary truly values: infrastructure, leadership, population centers. The Launch on Warning protocol shifts from a nuclear last resort to a conventional first principle. The drone doesn't just destroy the tank, it forces a decision that liquidates the entire strategic stability framework. The geographical coordinates of systemic risk are no longer located on a map of nation-states. The new battle space is a distributed network of solvency crises. We are not watching the decay of specific regions. We are watching the establishment of proxy laboratories. Internal political decay, such as civil rights warnings and calls for impeachment within American states, is not a domestic issue. It is a broadcast signal of perceived weakness, an open invitation for a strategic probe. These gray zone laboratories are used to field test the vectors of modern conflict. Case in point, Russia's deployment of new jet-powered attack drones. According to released footage, these systems are engineered for one purpose: neutralizing high-value assets with minimal kinetic cost. This is the blueprint. It is being refined in regional flashpoints, such as the ongoing crisis in Iran, to measure Western response times and political will. The goal is to calculate the precise amount of pressure required to fracture a fragile state. The response from the conventionally superior power is telling. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency's SHIELD program, bringing on commercial partner AST SpaceMobile, is not a system for stopping a symmetric peer-state attack. It is a tacit admission of vulnerability. This is a multi-billion-dollar investment in a distributed, space-based sensor grid designed to detect the launch signatures of the exact low-cost, asymmetric weapons being perfected in these proxy zones. It is a high-tech tourniquet applied to a systemic hemorrhage. The mechanism is a mathematical certainty. CSIS analysts note that as a fragile superpower's internal political situation deteriorates, its tolerance for perceived humiliation drops to zero. A successful asymmetric strike in a proxy zone, executed with a weapon like the new Russian drones, will not be met with a proportional response. To re-establish deterrence, the response must be disproportionate. This is the protocol that transitions the nuclear option from a launch-on-warning deterrent to a first-use strategic necessity, all because the foundation of national will has already been eroded from within. The doctrine is designated launch-on-warning. It is not a strategy, it is a solvency protocol. Upon detection of an inbound kinetic strike, a nation must launch its own assets before they are neutralized on the ground. The entire mechanism is predicated on one fragile variable: the integrity of early warning data. The primary vector for a decapitation strike is no longer a swarm of incoming warheads. It is a single, targeted cyber attack. Analysts at CSIS have modeled this scenario with mathematical certainty. An adversary can achieve a first strike capability not by building more missiles, but by engineering a zero-day exploit that blinds the target's radar and satellite command links, like those the Missile Defense Agency is developing. This creates the fog of digital war. In the command bunker, the screens go black. The commander is now forced into an impossible calculation. Is this a system failure or a deliberate blackout masking an imminent kinetic reality? The protocol's logic is irrefutable. The cost of inaction and being wrong is total annihilation. The cost of action and being wrong is global thermonuclear war. Out of fear, born from perceived weakness, the commander is forced to launch. This is not a choice. It is the execution of a trap. Adversaries no longer test a nation's military. They test its political solvency. The primary tool is the calibration shot, a low-cost, high-impact kinetic event engineered for plausible deniability. Its purpose is not destruction, but measurement, to see if a system fractured by internal decay, such as impeachment proceedings against regional leaders, source Baptist News Global, can muster the political will to respond. The mathematical certainty is that an attack vector will follow the path of maximum leverage for minimum kinetic cost. The blueprint is already operational. Adversaries like Russia are deploying new jet-powered one-way attack drones. Source: public military footage analysis. Systems designed for speed and low observability. These are not weapons of symmetric warfare. They are instruments of economic and political coercion. The optimal target is not a hardened military silo, but a dual-use strategic asset. Consider the U.S. Missile Defense Agency's SHIELD program, which now leverages commercial space assets. Source: Business Wire. Neutralizing the ground-based infrastructure for such a network offers the perfect blend of strategic impact and attribution impossibility. A crisis in a regional flashpoint like Iran, source Eurasia Review, provides the necessary geopolitical noise to mask the operation. The calibration forecast for the next 12 months. A non-attributable high-speed kinetic strike against a key satellite communications ground station in a Five Eyes country. The event will be officially categorized as a catastrophic technical failure or a localized atmospheric event. The objective is to blind a section of the strategic defense network, forcing a system-wide solvency test.